Welcome to WRM, Work Relationships Matter. I'm your host, the Edward Jones, a certified life coach and podcast host. My motto, work relationships work for those who work on them. My guest today is Richard Terrell, a former IBM and HP executive. He is here today to share his thoughts and his experiences about the world of work. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Ed.
Glad to have you here today. You have had a very successful career, but before that, give me some background on how everything got started.
Well, I've always, when I was younger, I always had an interest in science and experimenting and those kinds of things. And, built a single crystal radio when I was a teenager. And,
Okay.
always kind of tearing things apart and putting things together. And then when I was
Hmm.
in high school, in the 11th grade, I took an elective called electronics.
Hmm.
And really enjoyed that. And I was a college bound student and had an instructor, my electronics instructor, actually talked to me about a school called Cal Poly. Uh,
Okay.
and he suggested Cal Poly in that Cal Poly had a philosophy of learn by doing.
Hmm.
And so that in the first 2 years at Cal Poly, you would have a lot of application related
Hmm.
courses, uh, different than at, let's say, at UC Berkeley, where your first 2 years would be in non-engineering courses, and then the last 2 years you take your engineering courses. And so his
Okay.
suggestion about Cal Poly was that in the learn by doing process, again, if you were in any way had financial difficulty, after two
Hmm.
years, you'd have enough experience to be able to go
Okay.
out and work in the field. And so as a result of that, I applied for Cal Poly. I actually applied for UC Berkeley and got admitted to UC Berkeley, but
Hmm.
decided to go to Cal Poly. And that was really, I think, a very instrumental step in
Hmm.
my future success. So that's
Excellent.
kind of how I got started. Always had an interest. Didn't really know what engineering was at the time, but knew I liked to play around with things and take things apart and put things together. Always had
Okay.
an interest in mathematics, and so
Hmm.
yeah, it was just really a good fit once I got into it.
All right. Well, this next question, you probably already answered it, but did you choose your career or did your career choose you?
Well, I think it was really a combination of both. I think again, I'm a Christian, and so I believe that God had positioned me into a place where the career I chose was a career He had chosen for me, and a
Hmm.
match for my skills and abilities.
Okay. Well, that is excellent. So you've done as an executive, obviously you're a leader.
Hmm.
So when did you know that you were a leader? What types of things? Because it's one thing to do stuff on your own. It's
Yeah.
another thing to lead others.
Uh,
So when did that transition happen? Because I've had people who were great at a task, but when it came to managing people, for example, Michael Jordan was a great basketball player, but not a great coach
yeah.
because
Yeah.
he could do it, but he couldn't do it with others. So how did you transfer from that skilled person to being able to lead others?
Well, when I look back on it and reflect, uh, I was always self motivated as a young man. I was self motivated. I think I had good organizational skills and good communication skills, and as a result of those, I think I found myself in group settings, often being looked to as the leader of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that just seemed natural for me. It wasn't something that I uh, you know, went after, aggressively to be the leader. I was
Okay.
well content to be a part of the group, but again, as a part of a group, I had ideas. I was able to communicate my ideas. People seemed to gravitate towards me, and so I just the leadership role became pretty natural.
Hmm.
In my work career at IBM, I became a manager. I think after about 5 years in being an engineer, and then moved into a first line management position. And
Hmm.
again, it was just other people looking at me, seeing my skills, and I think really my organizational and communication skills were the ones I think that were most prominent in me, being put into a leadership position. And then with IBM, which has one of the world's best leadership training
Hmm.
programs, uh,
Right.
that leadership skill just got enhanced and embellished, and I think was helped me throughout my career at both IBM and HP.
So you were at IBM first?
I was at IBM first. I was spent 22 years at IBM,
All right.
and then I left IBM because I felt like I was ready for greater leadership,
Hmm.
and they didn't appear ready to give me that leadership.
Hmm.
And so I actually left IBM and went to a company called Tandem Computers.
Okay.
The boss I had worked for at IBM had left and gone to Tandem. He
Okay.
recruited me to come over to Tandem, and I went over to Tandem, and I think my career just blossomed even further.
Mm. Okay.
Tandem then got bought by Compaq. Compaq then got bought by HP. So that's how I ended up being part of HP.
Oh, I see. All right. So a lot of transition there.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, before I want to get more into your career advancement, but before I get there, you mentioned that IBM has a great leadership program. What did that consist of, and how did that help you? Be a little
Well,
bit more detailed with that.
yeah, IBM has really I thought, one of the world's best management training programs. So when you become a first line manager, you
Mm-hmm.
go off to Armonk for a week of management training, in full management training with other people that are now first line managers. Uh, then as you move up second line manager, you go back for a
Mm-hmm.
week of management training. In addition, they have management training courses that you can volunteer to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just great management training. So if you desire to advance in IBM, they provide just a wealth of management training. They had training programs where you spend a week actually. Yeah, I think I spent a month shadowing an IBM
Mm-hmm.
executive as part of the management training.
Mm-hmm.
They sent me off to an assignment in Tennessee, where I was working in the field office for a month. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I spent a year and a half in New York in
Okay.
a staff assignment at the headquarters level, and then came back to San Jose. So just a wealth
Mm.
of management training.
Right. Okay. And,
Yeah.
and one thing I want to look at is that first line versus second line management training.
Okay.
I learned it by hook or by crook. And as a work relationship coach, I want our listeners to understand the difference between first line management and higher level management. What is different between those two?
Well, at least in IBM and in the engineering world, first line manager, I'm managing engineers who are doing the engineering work directly.
Okay.
10 to 12 people.
Mm-hmm.
Second line manager, I'm actually managing managers.
Okay.
And so, where as a first line manager, I might have a group of 10 or 12 people. As a second line manager, I might have a group of 50 people and have 4 first line managers reporting directly to me. And so as a second line, you're managing managers.
Okay.
And
that's a different skill set, right?
Different skill set. You're not directly responsible for the work output, but you're directly responsible for a particular group doing their piece of the work so that all 4 groups' work product blends together as part of a bigger project.
Right.
So as a second line manager.
Okay, that could be a whole show on it in and of itself, because there's a lot that goes into managing managers.
Oh yeah.
And egos and everything else. Speaking of that, everything you say sounds great, but we don't live in a perfect world.
Yeah.
So what kind of obstacles did you face along the way?
Well, certainly as a first line manager, you're challenged somewhat. The technical people feel like that someone has to be their technical equal in order to manage. And so you have to demonstrate to them that a manager is not required to be the most technical person in order to manage.
Okay.
A manager needs to be able to communicate well, needs to be able to assess the skills of the people reporting to him so that they all work together. But it's not necessarily need to be the expert, because the problem with that is managers who they're the expert, you really then think that no one can do it as well as they could do it. Projects tend to then not be reflective of the group content as much as they are of the manager's personal direction, which may or may not be good. In some cases, it may be good. In some cases, it may not be so well. Yeah.
So did you get a lot of pushback because you weren't an expert in a certain area?
Well, not a lot of pushback, but pushback. And I think the way you overcome that pushback is by acknowledging, look, I'm not the smartest engineer in the group, but I am the manager.
Okay.
And my skills to plan and organize and communicate are what I'm being measured on. I know what I'm doing in those areas. I may not be the smartest technical, but I know what it's going to take to get this project done on time and within the budget. Okay. I say, and so that's the way we're moving. And so you have to be, firm in that, you don't have to try to, I can't think of the right word now, but because you're not the most technical, you don't have to try to make excuses for that. Just admit, I know you're smarter than me. You don't understand what it takes to manage this group and this project, and I do. So you have to be firm and confident in those areas where you are better equipped than they are because of your training, because of your experience, because of the expertise you have. Right. Yeah. So
there's an interesting thing, because there are in every industry, industries are stereotyped.
Oh yeah.
And when you think about engineering, it's very straightforward, very intelligent people, people with strong egos, people who are very, very focused, and that sort of thing. So as a manager, when you talk about, I'm looking at it from the big picture standpoint, not the detail standpoint. Were you able to convey that where they understood it, or they just said, okay, you're the boss, I'm going to do it?
Well, you have to one, understand your people. And so that's another critical skill of really understanding people. What are they motivated by? And it's been my experience that you have some people who are really project focused, and you have some people that are personal focused. And so you have to really sort out who's just on their own agenda and who's really trying to make the group, the department successful. And so you develop relationships, different relationships with different people in the group. Okay. And there are people that you develop relationships who they understand that you have the best interests of the project, of the company at heart, and they buy into that, and so they're willing to help you. You have some other people who are in it for their own agenda, who are maybe not happy because you're the manager for whatever reasons, and so you have to be aware of those people, and really, I think being able to communicate and to really understand how people are motivated and what their behaviors are, that becomes most critical.
Right.
You have to know what to believe and what not to believe. You have to know how to go get independent, use sources to get independent levels of information about where things are and how things are going. And you have to be able to call people out when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And not be bashful about it.
So what was the toughest situation you dealt with, and how did you handle it?
Well, when I was at HP, I was a director.
Okay.
And I was working with an individual who was a very bright engineer, technical director, and we both reported to the same vice president.
Okay.
And this particular individual had a sense that I just wasn't technically strong enough to be the director. And so we bumped heads, and other people saw it and knew it, and to the point where we actually had a confrontation with the vice president, where he just told her he didn't think I was technical enough to do this job. And the director said, "But he's the best manager I got." And so, what do you want me to do? And so she supported me, and he backed down.
Okay.
That was probably the most difficult, because he was a difficult individual to manage anyway. Technical director is one who usually doesn't report up the chain of command because of their technical expertise. And so he reports right in, like I say, at the vice president level. So we were at equal levels, if you will.
Right.
I was a manager and he was not.
Okay.
So he was providing technical direction for the project. I was providing managerial and organizational direction for the project. And he just felt like, things ought to be done his way. I didn't agree.
Right.
And so, like I said, we eventually, had a confrontation with the vice president, who backed me up and told him, hey, you got to learn to work with this guy.
Right.
I'm not going to fire him. I'm not going to set him down. I'm not going to set you down. You need to work with him.
Right.
And things worked out. Things worked out. But that was probably the most difficult and direct challenge to my authority that happened during my career.
And so you had to be strong, but you were very direct, and I guess you were cool and calm.
Oh yeah. I didn't get upset with him, and I didn't, jump up and down. He was the kind of guy that was jumping up and down and cursing, and he knew it. And I readily admitted that he was technically superior to me.
Right.
But that wasn't going to get the job done. That wasn't going to get everybody bought in, and he was not going to be running around telling my people what to do.
Oh my. Okay.
Okay. So, you can come talk to me and we can agree on a direction, but you're not going to be going out there changing direction because you're the smartest technical guy.
All right. Well, the thing I think about, Richard, is that leads me to the whole idea of leadership style, because I'm picking up some things here that as a leader, you're very direct, look to be inclusive as well. But rather than putting words in your mouth, how would you describe your leadership style?
Well, I would describe my leadership style as I don't know what to call it, cooperative, but or maybe benevolent authoritarian.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a young manager, first line manager, I guess I learned the skill that you don't have to prove to people that you're the boss.
Okay.
You don't
Okay.
had to learn that skill. And then
Right.
as I grew, I recognized that your authority and the weight behind that, you use that to again work with people and to get people to work with you.
Okay.
You don't have to walk around blowing your own horn. The fact
Right.
that you've achieved a certain level of uh, of management ability should speak for itself.
Right.
And so you didn't have to demonstrate that. And so, I think I was just a very strong organizational manager, and people that worked for me also wanted to work with me. And that together we accomplish our projects together. I wasn't the one trying to get all the credit for it, but together we got credit.
Right. Because the thing I think about is there are two things that come to mind right now. You have innate ability, but you also had training.
Yeah.
And when you look at that situation you faced, how did the training prepare you for dealing with difficult situations? And what was the emotion that you felt as you dealt with those things? Because it's one thing to read something on paper about how to manage, is another thing to be online and it's in your gut. So I said, it's not always the decisions with your head, it's the decisions in your gut that really make the difference, because that whole feeling, you say, oh, I know it in my head, but man, this is really, really rough. So how did the training you took prepare you for those difficult situations?
Well, I think the training, one you went through various role playing situations.
Okay, all right.
Okay, and so the training taught you be affirmative about who you are and what your position is. Don't be weak about that. Don't be apologetic. I'm in this position. I'm in this position because the people above me believe that I have the skills and demonstrated abilities to work effectively at this position. So that's a gift. That's a gift.
Right.
Okay. Now, secondly, training. How do you work with people? How do you assess people? How do you assess what their motivations are, what their idiosyncrasies are, and how do you use them to the best advantage in individual situations? And so in this particular person, he had the expertise. We needed his skills, but his challenging my authority and talking throughout the organization about my authority was something that had to be addressed.
Right.
Okay. And I addressed it with him directly in a non-confrontational way, but directly to let him know that I'm in charge. I'm the manager. Okay. And, this is what we're going to do and why we're going to do it from my perspective. So one training says, explain to people what you're doing, why you're doing it, so there is no confusion. Okay. Listen to them. So hear their side of it. And so I listened to his side of the story. And then I said, okay, here's how we should move forward together. So try to get them to buy in. Whether they buy in or not, they can't go somewhere telling people that I didn't understand or no, I don't know. So I think all of that training helped you to not take it personally, but to understand what the bigger goal is, and how to best achieve that bigger and higher goal.
Richard, that is excellent. I wish I had an opportunity to talk to someone like you when I started my career. As I said, I had to learn by hook or by crook,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
hope this podcast will help those people who are becoming managers, first, second, higher levels, to get a feel for what it's like to
yeah,
be in those roles and how to deal with them.
yeah.
These are excellent nuggets that you've given us here today. Is
Yeah,
there
and
anything else that you'd like our listeners to know? Anything else
well,
you'd like to
what
share?
I want to emphasize is I didn't do all this on my own.
Right.
I certainly had, in addition to the formal training we got, I
Hmm.
had good relationships with the people I worked for,
Okay.
and those people helped me along. And I sometimes wondered why are they picking me out? Why me? Uh,
Hmm.
but again, apparently those people saw something in me, and they invested in that in me. And I think one, it's not just what you know, but who you know. And clearly, as you get into higher levels of executive management, that's very critical
What do
because
you think they saw in you?
well, I can't say, but I've always tried to be a person of integrity.
Hmm.
I've always tried to be a person that when I said I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Hmm.
I've been a person that says, look, if I don't think we can do this on this schedule and this budget, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to work with the people that I have working for me.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I hope they saw the integrity, the accountability, the dependability, the availability. They knew I was, 100% bought in. If I needed to, jump on a plane and fly to New York tomorrow
Hmm.
for a project, I'll do it. I'm not going to have
Right.
excuses or other restraints. And so I think the result of that, again, when I left IBM and went to HP, I went to Tandem. Uh,
Hmm.
this fellow I went to work for there, I had a lot of respect for him. And when he, talked to me about coming over there, I was kind of, first of all, why would I leave IBM? And
Hmm. Hmm.
but again, he really kind of talked to me is, you really don't understand the abilities and skills you have because within IBM, they keep everybody sheltered from the outside world. But if you had an exposure to this outside world, you'd realize how valuable the skills and abilities you have are. And taking his word for it and taking that job at Tandem proved to be one of the greatest decisions of my career. You know,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't think I ever would have made a vice president at IBM.
Right. Well, that is great. I mean, that is you took the risk too. Sometimes you got to step out there on
Oh yeah,
faith.
yeah,
But one thing I'd say, Richard, the first thing you said was, "I don't know what they saw in me." Then you described everything that they saw.
well, I just think those are the skills I think I have, and those are the skills I think I leveraged in all of my assignments. And in hindsight, I just think they were effective, and I think they were God-given uh, gifts that I was able to use. So,
Right.
I
Well,
get
the thing I say is this, Richard, is that uh, when our listeners hear this, those things that you mentioned would be things that if they don't have them innately, they can work on those things
yep,
so that they can build those skills. So you weren't looking to be picked, you just had those skills and people saw them.
yep.
So that's important for young managers to know. So I really appreciate that insight.
Okay, okay.
So anyway, all that stuff was in you and it's just there and everybody else is seeing it and you're just going through life.
Best I can. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So our time is running out. As I said, 30 minutes goes really, really
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah, it does.
So is there anything else before we sign off?
Well, again, I think the advice I'd give to people is, choose something that you are passionate about, that you enjoy. I never regretted going to work a day in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Never regretted going to work a day in my life. So if you have something that you enjoy, you're passionate about, and you feel like you're making a contribution, I think that makes it easier to rise to whatever challenges you face.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, great. Great. Well, with that, I will sign off. Again, this is WRM Work Relationships Matter. I'm your host, a certified life coach and podcast host. And I want to thank you all for being here. To learn more about my coaching business, go to prodestinycoaching.com. With that, I will bid you a good day. And thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you, Ed, for this opportunity.
You're welcome.
All right.
Okay, we'll sign off. Okay, we are going to welcome to WRM, Work Relationships Matter. I am the Edward Jones, your host, and a certified life coach who specializes in work relationships. My motto is work relationships work for those who work on them. Jennifer Harris is my guest today. She's an instructor in the San Juan School District. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Edward. Great to be here.
And it's great to have you here. We met through Toastmasters, and you've been kind of a coach for me on Toastmasters. You've helped me get through a lot of things. You've given me excellent feedback. It shows you're an excellent instructor if you can help me. And you've been a tremendous help to me. So I thank you for that. Also, I attended your classroom, and it was a great experience. You have a wonderful relationship with them. So I just got a good feel for how you work with people as an instructor. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about your background, how you got started, and all that sort of thing. So we want to get to know who Jennifer is before we get into the elements of your work experiences.
Well, that's very kind, Edward. Thank you. And you were an excellent guest speaker in my classroom, and the students really connected with you. It was great to have you. How I got into teaching was in college. I just didn't have that much that was defined for me, like, this is what I want to be, this is what I want to do. But I kept taking my subject matter classes, and eventually I ended up with my bachelor's degree, and I decided, may as well get a teaching credential. Little did I realize at the time, well, hey, my grandmother was a teacher, my mother's a teacher, my father is an instructor and in his field of work. So we have this deep in our family, but it wasn't something that came about because it was drilled into me or because I had some serious calling early on in life. It just kind of evolved over time, and it was really great that in high school I had the opportunity, high school and college, I had the opportunity to do a little bit of coaching for a gymnastics recreational program in our city rec department. Now, I was no amazing gymnast, believe you me. I was a high school team member who basically just was there trying to figure out what I'm doing, but I was in this position where I was able to work with children and learn by doing. And that really gave me a great hands-on approach and just getting right in there and trying to show the students what to do. And maybe that was what really sparked my interest. And I love sharing information with people. That's just a natural for me. There's no other way to go about it. In my mind, you learn something important, you turn to the person to your left or to your right and you say, hey, did you know this? And some people don't operate that way. They want to research or they want to find it out on their own, which is fine too. But for me, it's just natural to say, hey, I found out this. Do you need to know this? So that's how I landed in teaching.
All right, so just kind of a family affair, and you just moved on and followed the lead of your parents. Do you have siblings too?
Yes, and we all have our different things that we do, but but learning how to your world of office politics, how to get along with people, how to make a project go forward, how to have a team effort or to do something together, that goes across all lines. And that to me is super interesting, what you do and how you've been able to decrease the chaos in the office.
Right. Now, the thing that I asked, and you might have already answered this, but did you choose your career or did it choose you?
I'd say that it probably chose me, because back to college, I just wasn't that strong in sciences and math. I like them. I respect those fields. It didn't spark my interest as much, and it didn't come very easily to me. Whereas languages that was much more of an interest. And I just remember in some of those classes, grammar or whatever, people would be sitting next to me going, oh no. And I'd be thinking, oh, hey, this is kind of interesting. And so that's where I would say it kind of chose me. And just being able to have a teaching credential was something that appealed to me. And it was just economic as well. It's like, where do you get a job? Well, get a teaching credential, you can teach. So that's kind of how it chose me.
All right. And I'm going to ask you this question. I have my opinion, but do you consider yourself a leader?
I do. In my culture or in my family, in my sphere, it's not our way to say, hey, I'm a leader. Hey, this is so great about me. This is a common thing these days, is to be able to tout all your attributes. And for me, I say, yes, I am a leader, but I don't say it with pride in terms of, look at me, I'm so great. I say it as, I kind of can't help myself. It's where I find myself, because it's so obvious to me when someone needs to step up, someone needs to do something, or everyone in the room is looking around like, what do we do next? And for me, for some reason, I'm usually thinking to myself, well, hey, the next natural step is somebody stand up and move forward. And I guess one of the things that may have influenced me is my dad has always said, well, someone's got to do this. Why not you? Not necessarily that you have to be the out front leader, but look, somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to be first place, or someone's got to be the one in front, the one starting. Not that you always have to be the winner or want to be a winner. That's not it at all. But look, who do you think is going to do this stuff? Someone. Why not you?
So that's an interesting thing, because knowing you have been selected not because of, there are the egotistical leaders, and those really, in my opinion, are not really leaders. They could be bosses, but they're not leaders. But take Toastmasters for example. You actually kind of shied away from leadership, but everybody's looking and saying, you've got all the qualities that help make everybody better. And that's what I consider a leader. Someone who could pull it all together and make that group work very, very well, which is a very, very outstanding quality. And there I use that very, very, and you've got me on that before. But you were drafted as a leader. You didn't say, I'm a leader, I want to be the leader. And you said, well, maybe I'm too strong. And everybody says, no, you're like that baby, that Three Bears story, you're just right. and that's what happened with the leadership. So that's the thing that I see leadership as a positive, collaborative thing. And that's how I would describe your leadership. Am I on point with that?
I think you are. I know that I have maybe in younger years, or maybe in other situations, I've come off as a steamroller more than a leader. And you really, you cannot steamroll over people, or you lose everybody. And sometimes to me, there's such a sense of urgency, or there's such a sense of, come on, people, this is obvious. And it's not obvious to people. Everyone has different goals or different traits or different things that are meaningful to them. So even if there is something that's seemingly obvious or an overriding need, if those people don't see it, there's no sense getting into steamroller mode, because all you're going to do is crush everybody. So I do have to be very careful, because it's more important to mesh with people and to figure out how to move forward together, rather than to just say, this tank's rolling, get out of the way.
So how did you learn that? Because we don't want to lose those leadership qualities. And obviously you've learned something from previous experiences that maybe weren't as good. So how did you adjust to become a more, as you'd say, not a steamroller leader?
Right. I have a couple of really close friends, not many, but there are a few people who will just flat out tell me straight to my face, look, and I can remember distinctly, in a volunteer organization, when your kids are little, you volunteer, swim team, soccer team, ballet, whatever, you volunteer. And, one of my friends was courageous enough to say, look, there's more than one way to skin a cat. It doesn't always have to be your way. Now think about that, mom to mom, we're sitting there calling each other on the carpet, and it was my turn to be called on the carpet. And I had to step back and just say, oh yeah, I guess so. How can I be a little more diplomatic here? Or how can I work differently with people? So volunteering to me has possibly been one of my biggest training grounds, because when we volunteer, we're giving away tons of time, resources, and monetizable. You could put a dollar amount on the amount of time I've, quote, given away, but I gave that freely and for a good reason, my own children, of course. On the other hand, this was hard work. I mean, the emotional and the relational difficulty was certainly a high price. And I'm finally learning, you can't grow, you can't do anything without that kind of tension and friction. It's not my fun thing to do. I don't wake up in the morning saying, hey, I know, I'd like to have a lot of tension and friction with people today. But you and I both know, if we get together with folks, parents, whoever we're volunteering with, and we do something important or do something that requires a lot of cooperation, we're going to have to flex with each other. That's just the way it is. And wow, I've over the years learned a little bit of that. And then just the hard work, the number of hours you spend with people, right? So that's probably the most, over the years, doing that sort of thing with volunteer organizations.
And that's an interesting point, because I've worked in both, and perhaps you have as well. But when you work with a bureaucracy where people are paid, you have that leverage over them. And actually working in those structured paid organizations was easier for me. But volunteer organizations, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You can't fire them. You can't, if you get too strong on them, they walk away and you don't even have them at all. So that becomes a thing where it's a organized organization with payment versus a volunteer organization. The skill sets overlap, but the ability to, influence, really the give and take has to be there. So that's the difference that I look at. So that's actually tougher. So the reward may not be in money, but the reward is in getting things done that serve other people.
Yeah, volunteering is very interesting, and it can be so rewarding. And yet, I feel for the people who manage volunteers, because volunteering in this day and age is a very different, it's an unusual, I think it's a little bit of an unusual scenario, in that people are constantly either wanting to, quote, give back, or they're being pushed to give back. And, sometimes volunteers are not easy to work with, as well-meaning as they may be. And the project is not necessarily as successful because you have to wait for everybody to get on board and you don't have commitment. You just have people who are placeholders for their 1 hour that they want to do that week or something, alongside other volunteers who are just on fire, and they are the most valuable folks around. And you would pay them anything you could if you could have them on your payroll, but you can't for whatever reason. So volunteering to me is very interesting. And for the population I work with right now, teaching English as a second language, we try to tell people, look, your English is okay. I know you're not ready to go out and get a job, but if you want to try to volunteer somewhere, man, that is the best place, because it's almost like a mini job interview. The company or the agency can see you in flesh and blood. They can see you face to face. They can see your work ethic. They can see how you interact. And then you can also see, hey, is this company a true potential fit? Or is this organization something that meshes with me and I could see myself actually working here down the road? So volunteering is a golden opportunity.
Great. Because the thing of it is that I think about that, and the other thing that it leads me to is feedback and asking for it. And that's one of the things that you're really, really good at, I believe, in terms of doing that. But sometimes that feedback is tough to receive. In fact, in addition to podcasting, coaching, and other things, I'm also a blogger, and my blog for this week was giving and receiving feedback, and how difficult it can be because of something called negativity bias, meaning that for every one bad thing you tell somebody, you've got to tell them 5 to 10 good things to even it out. So that becomes a big part, because in volunteering, you've got to get that feedback if you want to get things done. So has that helped you in your ability to give and receive feedback? And how is feedback for you? Because sometimes people go into performance appraisal conference, they go, oh my goodness, my performance is going to be appraised. What are they going to say? Or maybe somebody comes out of left field and blasts you. How do you deal with that?
Oh, I think that for me, if someone's willing to give any sort of feedback, it's an opportunity. And I realize a lot of people in the whole customer service realm might be just reacting knee-jerk, hey, my thing's not on time, or you didn't meet my expectation. So it's hard. We have to manage our expectations. But anybody who's willing to take time to give feedback, think about it. There are so many companies out there who are paying people to give feedback. They would pay to know what their customers really think. So it helps to develop thick skin, of course. And to me, the key is figuring out what's really true, what you totally need to listen to and realize, oh yeah, I didn't fix that problem. I've been getting the same feedback. I'm still not fixing that. And allowing the other feedback that's not really genuinely directed at you, or it's just somebody's mad about something else, let that go away from you and don't worry too much about that. So I guess learning how to filter it properly, but mainly just remembering that anybody who takes the time to give feedback, they're taking a moment. That's a risk for them too. They are putting themselves out there because they're wondering if this is going to be okay for them to even say it, to tell you, hey, your perfume's too strong. I can't be in the room with you. Do you mind not putting so much perfume on when you come into the office? I mean, how uncomfortable is that? Nobody wants to have that kind of talk, but this is the kind of stuff that the details, we have to get it right if we want to be able to move forward in a way that's more productive, right? So I guess building those relationships, being authentic, that's tough.
It is. It really is. And when I talk about my blog, what I was saying is that when people have that, they could have, say, 1 to 10 items on a performance review. 8 of them are great. but two of them, maybe one might say needs improvement, one might say fair. The person focuses in on the fair and needs improvement. Like, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then when supervisors get that blowback, then they're less likely to give feedback the next time. So that person continues to do those things that may not be what that they could do better.
Mm.
So it requires a level of resilience to do that. And I'm thinking that there are people who are going to be listening to this podcast who this resonates with.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to do the feedback, but it's emotionally it kind of gets to them. So when you say that you can just kind of push it aside or do whatever, how do you develop those skills to be able to do that? Because sometimes giving or giving feedback and getting feedback on your feedback can sometimes be hard.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess as a stay-at-home mom, I worked in the public school right before we had our children and stayed at home for a long time. And then I'm back in the workforce now, but not for a long time or anything. So just any feedback, because as a mom at home, I don't get a performance review other than, hey, the meatloaf was pretty good tonight. Or something.
Well, and you have teenagers, right?
Well, they're actually grown now, but
but when they were teenagers,
mm-hmm.
I imagine you got feedback then.
Oh yeah, and you do. Teens are great because they will speak frankly. If you are able to have that open communication, and it hasn't always been, and I'm not deluded into thinking I have perfect communication with my children, my adult children. The things that they say though that sting, that are true, mm-hmm. That's valuable. That's extremely valuable because again, they are the people who will really tell you, and they know exactly what's true. And I just am in the workplace, in the formalized workplace, if you get any review, remember that took time and money for someone to sit down and formulate that thing. I have been in plenty of jobs where I haven't gotten any feedback or only the negative feedback, no acknowledgement of the hard work that I did. I'm thinking of the volunteer organizations, and that's just a symptom of what kind of organization it is. But any feedback, I don't know, maybe I'm trying to say that it's kind of like any press is good press. You just take it, try to learn from it. If you're in a workplace where you can wear your perfume as loud and brash as you want to, and you keep on doing it, even if 5 people have said, look, that perfume's killing us all, that's your responsibility. But when that person comes up to you and says, figuratively, your perfume, whatever that trait is that's going on that needs attention, think about it and figure it out. I just think feedback's helpful. It's not easy to hear sometimes, but it can be really helpful.
And what I would say is this, Jennifer, I think you are excellent at giving it. In some ways, and we didn't go into your giving it, but I would say that I will toot your horn for you in that if there is anything, and you give it so well. I laugh about some of the things, but they are on point. I remember when we were meeting in public, I was trying to read something and my eyes are not the best. And you pull me aside and you say, well, maybe if you clean your glasses, it'll be a little bit better. I get, it's funny, but it's cute. And then you say, well, your camera's a little murky here. And so it's the things that you do. And it's like, but it's never offensive. It's always with the intent to help. And when I went up for the speech contest, I was thinking, I hope that Jennifer is my evaluator because she will tell me what I need to know in a very good way where it's easy to receive. Now, that's a skill that maybe you just have, but it would be so great for our listeners to have an idea of what it's like to be able to get feedback that is direct to the point, not sugar-coated, but very direct, but very easy to accept.
Mm.
Is that just natural, or is there anything you could tell people as to how to learn how to do that?
I believe that's the process of being in a Toastmasters club for 15 years or more, learning by listening to other people's evaluations. You know, in Toastmasters, we give an on-the-spot evaluation verbally and in writing for every speech that's given, for every prepared speech that's given. And these are golden evaluations because nowhere that I know of do you get an immediate feedback loop like that. And I have listened to other people give feedback, give their evaluations, and I've realized, ow, that kind of stings, or hey, that's really effective. I can see how commenting on this as a point to consider is really helpful. So it's probably from all the times I've listened to other evaluators and I've learned from them.
Well, great. And I think it definitely is very helpful because being in Toastmasters is well-rounded for me. Why did you choose to get into Toastmasters in the first place?
Very interesting. I had a friend, an acquaintance actually, in my college days. He was in medical school. I was an undergraduate. I happened to pop by and say hello to him, and I saw him at the library. And he mentioned something about, yeah, my advisor told me I needed to join Toastmasters, so I'm working on that. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. This guy's brilliant. He's in medical school. He's going to clearly make a great doctor, but he's so awkward. He could definitely use the help because the bedside manner was always going to be a problem for him if he didn't get it fixed. And then many years later, I read in a book, join Toastmasters, join Toastmasters, join Toastmasters. And I finally looked up online and I saw that Toastmasters was available in my area, and the early morning club that I belonged to happened to fit with my schedule. And that's how I joined. And I was so, it just was such a good fit for me. And I've kept on ever since.
Well, great. And I'm so glad that you did. Jennifer, as I mentioned, and when I wrote you, that 30 minutes goes by so fast. Is there any, and the thing we look at, I'm a work relationship coach, and teaching, family, volunteer, that's all part of it. There are people who will be listening to this that are in volunteer organizations. There are people who have families and who need feedback or whatever it might be. So the information you provided has been very helpful. Whether people are stay-at-home moms, teachers, whatever it might be, will be helpful because it goes across all lines. Is there anything else you want to share with people that would be helpful to them as they work at home, wherever it might be? Just pearls of wisdom that you have. And you're a modest person and you take so much for granted that you do well. But I want you to dig deep and think about what you can share with people that will be helpful to them.
I'll repeat what I said about, my dad really gave me this idea of like, who do you think is going to do this stuff? Who do you think does this? Someone's going to have to do it. May as well be you. So don't shy away from leadership. Leadership can be a very small thing, but it's important. So don't worry about it. If you need a leader, that leader might be you. And then if you are in leadership and you are reluctant to give feedback, just remember, people, even though it may be uncomfortable, people really, they know that you value their work if you come around and inspect it. What possible value is there when you do a good job and nobody acknowledges a thing that you worked on? Now, maybe there is a little 20% that needs to be buffed up and shined a little better, but that you did some hard work there. So acknowledging the work and inspecting it in some form or fashion, whether that's a physical inspection or whether that's just saying, hey, I wondered how that report go. Good job on that. I noticed your last paragraph was a little iffy. Could you tighten that up, please? That kind of thing. People know when you're working for them and with them. And if your evaluation is an effort on your part, people know when you care.
That's great. And I'm glad you said that because you just brought something else to my mind. When people are given feedback, we think sometimes it's not the good stuff. But what I hear you saying is that you want to give that feedback on the good stuff.
Mhm.
And so therefore, welcoming feedback because you are recognized for the work that you're doing and it's not taken for granted.
Mhm.
And that's why, as supervisors, as leaders, we need to give feedback and tell people how valuable they are and how much we appreciate them. So that is the best feedback one could get. Thank you for that nugget.
My pleasure.
Now, you work at San Juan School District,
Mhm.
and you're obviously love Toastmasters, and you do the flower thing, and you all these other things. So, if you wanted to leave the listeners with a way to contact you about any of those organizations, is there a website or number that they could call or something they could check out to learn more about the areas that you're involved in?
You can look on Instagram at France Harris, like the country France, France
Mm-hmm.
Harris. And then LinkedIn, I'm not very active on LinkedIn, but I am there. And I look forward to answering any questions if someone has a question. And I just appreciate so much this opportunity.
Well, great. And it's been great having you. So now we'll sign off and I'll say we're finalizing with WRM Work Relationships Matter. I am your host, The Edward Jones. If you want to learn more about my coaching business, go to www.prodestinycoaching.com. It's been great having you, Jennifer. Look forward to continuing to work with you at Toastmasters and love your help and how supportive you've been of me. It's been great. And thank you for taking the time today to talk to me.
My pleasure.
And we're out.